Hello, everybody. This is a day that has a lot of people very upset with the action post earnings. Tesla typically falls 10%, and it did just that again. But I'm here with somebody I very much admire and respect. Hans, we met at Austin at the Cybertruck event. You were incredible. I've been watching you for a long time on Herbert's channel and with Farzad and others. But for everybody who doesn't know Hans, he has a unique ability to break down very complex topics. And you are so versed in AI and robotics and manufacturing and everything else. You're kind of like the AI, Elon, Tesla whisperer. And I also can't believe the timing of today's video because this is when people need some comfort. So you're also going to be a bit of a therapist today, and we're going to talk about everything. And I've made a big bet in my life. I've been investing in Tesla since 2017, and I think it's a very special company. But before we even jump in, I'm going to ask you how you are, and then we're going to go through the most rigorous interview you've ever had in the space of an hour.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And I am great. I honestly really enjoy just being on the roller coaster. As far as both watching the markets, watching the stock, being invested in the ups and the downs. They say that the price of outperformance is volatility. And I have learned to really be okay with volatility. I'm a young guy, and so I have time. I have a decent sized allocation in my retirement portfolio that is Tesla. But honestly, if that went to zero, that's not going to super negatively impact my life in the near term. It definitely affects our retirement plans, but I also have time to fix that. And so I am not someone who has so much of my identity and my net worth tied up in this one thing that volatility really sets me on tilt. And so I enjoy just learning the cycles that businesses go through in the process of disruptive innovation. And of course, I think as we're going to get into, I believe that AI and robotics are set to be the next wave of technological disruption, and that they're going to change things far more dramatically than the iPhone changed things over the last 10 to 15 years. And so these are the things that I'm focused on. And the reason that I look at the technology of artificial intelligence is because I believe in such things as leading indicators and lagging indicators. And I believe that financial results are lagging indicators of a combination of exceptional business performance in a number of categories. One of them is going to be technology, but the other one is going to be culture and then fiscal responsibility. And so those are things that I really try to take a hard look at. And on all of those metrics, I really feel like Tesla is laying a lot of really good groundwork. And when I listened to the call yesterday, I did not feel upset in any way about their execution on the leading indicators that I believe are going to drive huge performance in the stock over the next 10 years. And I'm not worried about what the movement in the stock is over the next 3 months, because to me, that's immaterial.
It's remarkable. Oh, by the way, before I forget, and I'll say this at the end too, please follow Hans Nelson on Twitter, and he has his own YouTube channel as well. Make sure you subscribe to that. But when you look at what went down, I think the so-called Wall Street analysts, they didn't get the forward guidance they need to pencil in their numbers. So they got this spreadsheet, and they need an expectation for 12 weeks from now, and then 24 weeks from now, etc. They didn't get that, so they're frustrated. And Elon did drop a few bombshells, good and bad. So we might as well get the earnings talk out of the way before we get into the meat of this conversation. But could it be, and I always try and think with a tinfoil hat on, could it be that he's talking down the price for his new comp plan? Or is that a wild theory? Or does he just simply not like to do what Wall Street wants?
Um, my sense of Elon from watching hundreds and potentially thousands of hours worth of Elon speaking over the years at this point in time, I don't believe that enters into the calculus for him. I think that he is, and this is partly is from his twinge of being on the spectrum, whatever that looks like, is that he is just being honest and truthful about what he thinks and feels at that moment. And I don't think that he plays a lot of the 3D chess that a number of people try and read into him about his intentions and what he's trying to do kind of behind the scenes. I could be totally wrong about that, but that's my sense.
I agree with that as well, because what I admire about him most is he is brutally honest. He doesn't sugarcoat anything. But there were people that are thinking, oh, he's just trying to talk down the stock so he can get a better plan or whatever, or sell less to pay taxes if he does have to exercise options. So we got that out of the way, which is good. Now, when we looked at the earnings, again, the analysts are disappointed because they didn't get the guidance for how many cars and what margins would look like, etc. But this does mark, like typically Tesla falls 10% after earnings. It's done that for the last 4 quarters. This time is no different. In full disclosure, I did buy today at 180. So hopefully we nail the bottom. But when I look at the roadmap of what they've done, and we'll get into some of the real groundbreaking things, but the biggest bombshell for me in this earnings call was the fact that he said he would be shipping the humanoid robot next year. And then we have Omar from Omar's catalog. He's driving from San Francisco to San Jose, 55 miles, no intervention. Went out last night, grabbed a burrito. FSD is here. The version 12 is mind blowing from what I can see. And I know the streets he is on so well. What do you take about those two bombshells? FSD V12 and Optimus shipping next year.
No, I'm incredibly excited about V12 because it is, for the first time, an entirely end-to-end neural net in the vehicle that is taking photons in, controls out. We've heard that phrase from Elon quite a few times, but it finally signals the time when we really have software 2.0 running on the vehicle. And this is the A architecture of full self-driving. Now, it may be that there are some issues that they may be getting a C performance and an A architecture as they roll out FSD V12, and we should see it get better. But from what we've seen so far, it doesn't even look like it's a step back. It looks like maybe we're at a B or a B plus execution on what is now an A architecture. And so the things that people really need to pay attention to this year is how fast do we get the rollouts of the further iterations of 12. Is it 12.1? How long does it take to get from there to 12.2, and so on and so forth? And then how large are the improvements in between those things? Because the thing that we've run into this whole time is that Tesla kept hitting local maximums of they could improve performance only so far, and then they would run into some sort of ceiling and they had to re-architect a whole bunch of stuff so that they could pass through that. And because this is an entirely new software architecture running in the car, we don't know yet what those ceilings could be. And it's possible. And this is the hope, but also something that's backed up based on the way that we understand how other AI software works, that this is an architecture that doesn't have an upper bound, that's not going to hit a ceiling like that, and that as long as they continue to feed it more data and to increase the amount of compute that they're training on, that the performance will just continue to improve and improve and improve and improve. And that is why Elon thinks that this is potential to actually, on version 12 at some point in the future, be off of beta and just be full self-driving, the package that is something that delivers on all the promises that FSD has ever made. That doesn't so that's FSD, not necessarily robotaxis. Let's separate the two. But yes, V12 has the very real potential to deliver on all the promises of FSD.
Can I step in for a second? You talked about starting with C and then upper bound. Can you explain to the audience what you mean by that?
So this is a set of language that Drew has talked a lot about with the 4680s that the 2170 pack was a maybe a C architecture, and they were doing very good at making these batteries that had really limits on how good they could be, and put in a pack that wasn't a structural pack because the cells were not designed to be able to carry any load through them as well. And so that the if we think of the 2170 battery pack as a C architecture, he said, okay, the 4680 structural pack, that is going to be an A architecture. And when we make the switch over from we're getting an A in making these 2170 non-structural packs that we're very good at making, but it's a C architecture. When we go from there into the 4680 structural packs, we're not going to be very good at making them at first. And so we're going to be getting a C in an A architecture. And so that means that your performance and actually dropped a little bit. We've seen that the 4680 Model Ys coming out of Giga Austin really were not as good from a battery standpoint as the 2170 Model Ys. And so that C in an A architecture actually was a little bit degraded performance compared to and so maybe what you really call that is a D in an A architecture compared to getting an A in the C architecture of the 2170s. And I think the same thing can basically be said of the full self-driving software, that as they've got all these individual if this then this, if this then this situations that are coded into hand coded lines of software, and we know it's 300,000 lines plus of software to try and account for all the possible different scenarios that you might run into while you're driving, and tell the computer explicitly what it needs to do in that exact situation. That just is very difficult to make in a way that fully covers what's possible to encounter in the real world. And that's why you keep running into these edge cases where you can't figure out how to make the system better, you can't improve, and you can't fix that problem. Um, Now that we have this neural net architecture where it just looks at video and it tries to come up with an understanding of what is driving. It's not tell me exactly what I need to do at every single turn in every single possible scenario. This neural net is saying, okay, what is a car? What are people? What is it to drive through space, and how do we do that safely? And it's actually developing abstract understandings of what those concepts are, and then how to execute those concepts through controls. And this is exactly what something like ChatGPT does. That you can think of, everyone says, hey, this is just a next word predictor, but you can realize that there's a lot that goes into predicting what that next word is, because you have to have a conceptual understanding of the language, but also of the concepts that people are trying to communicate in language and the context. And so you could say the dog ate my, and almost everyone will assume, okay, the next word is going to be homework. Well, if all you understand is language and you don't have the cultural context to understand that the dog ate my homework is a phrase that is a common phrase, then you are not going to predict homework based on an if this understanding that doesn't take that into account. And so they're kind of doing the same general architecture now with full self-driving V12. And that's where I think that it's, we don't know what we don't know yet. There could be things that we run into that we don't expect, but there's nothing that we know that's going to be a real roadblock moving forward.
Yeah, so everything I hear about it is it's much more human like than the previous code, much smoother because it's learned from watching the best drivers in the best edge cases. But Elon always talks about photons in, action out. He's always mentions this. Can you explain the significance? Because one of the things I think is uncanny is everywhere you go in the world, even state to state, even city to city, there are different rules of the road, different types of structures, different types of traffic lights. Now, you imagine rolling that across China, Europe, Eastern Europe, South Africa, all these different places, South America, which is I've been in many parts of the world, and they have some crazy roads. But do you envision they can just take all the data they have from all the cars that have been running around the world, feed the machine, so now FSD can roll down a country road in Spain or through Manila in the Philippines? Do you believe that?
Yes, I absolutely believe that that's possible. And the way that we can kind of imagine this would work. I don't know that there may be better ways to do this, and Tesla may figure out a better way, but this is a way that definitely can work and does work in other scenarios where you have a big block of neural net, and that is your this is we'll go back to the chat GPT example. So GPT 3.5, GPT 4, GPT 4.5, those are a big block of code, and that's a general world understanding that's built into that, but those models suck as chatbots. So they have to do this other thing where they do this reinforcement learning with human feedback and some other things that they do that they put on top of in between. So you've got your here, I'll try and do this in the right direction for y'all. So you've got your GPT, we'll say 4 block here. Then they put in over here another layer, and that's going to be the transformation from GPT-4 into Chat GPT-4. And that layer there can be trained in different scenarios, in different languages, for different environments. And that is what I expect to see Tesla build, is that at the end of the day, they're going to come out with a model that is the general world driving model. And then next to that, they're going to put this is the shim layer, essentially, that we use to transform the outputs of the general world driving model into the controls for driving in this geography with these specific sets of laws. And they have the data engine because they have so many cars in so many places around the world. Like, they're never going to ship, I don't believe, full self-driving to a country that they don't have any cars in that are collecting data. So they need to have a fleet in that place. That fleet needs to be collecting video of how humans actually drive. From that video, they will come up with a local policy shim layer, and that is what they will use once they have that data, then to be able to give you, the insane India specific FSD that can deal with all of the donkeys and the rickshaws and the mix of, yeah, people walking and riding bicycles and motorcycles and buses and all the stuff. Um, and they absolutely will be able to do that, and they can do that because people do that. And so it can learn just by watching video. It can abstract, this is the human policy of driving in this location, and I can learn what that is from a conceptual perspective, and then I can add that to my general driving world model knowledge, and I don't have to sit there and retrain from scratch. This is, we don't have to go through the whole process in China or in India that we have gone through in the United States to build up FSD. It's just an addition and a modification of an existing working system.
So, from the video I saw from Hallmark's catalog, going from San Francisco to San Jose, 55 miles, no intervention. How far do you think we are from going from, say, San Francisco to LA, sitting in the back, reading a book and doing nothing? Is that a 2024 thing or a 2025 event? Because there's a lot of talk and expectation around robo taxis and everything else. This is integral to
Mhm.
that. How far are we away from your point of view?
I mean, it all depends on risk. I think that you could make that drive this year. If, say, no regulatory hurdles involved, you could make that drive this year probably 99 times out of 100 with no issues. But, if you're going to be making it a bunch of times, you don't want to have the risk of that one time. And that's going to be why you're still required to have responsibility for the vehicle, is for that 1 out of 100 times. But as the software improves, it could get to the point where we see it really enter that gray zone that is level 3, where it can see ahead of time, hey, I'm going to get into an issue in this specific scenario. And if I do, I'm either going to pull over or you're going to take over, one of the two. And at that point in time, you really could actually enjoy that drive, being disengaged from the driving process completely unless it was informing you. And I think that there's a actually significant, from a commercial perspective, period in between level 2 FSD and level 4 FSD. And I believe that Tesla will end up doing a lot of basically SaaS business in that phase before we get all the way to full robotaxi. I don't think this is going to be a binary switch where we go from driving our cars and being responsible to riding around in robotaxis overnight. Um, I just don't buy the overnight asset value increase thing in that way.
Or could they do the kind of Waymo model where they just select cities, select speeds, select areas as a first
Yes.
step?
Oh, absolutely. There will be some services that probably look like that. And then a number of other like I think that this is my read from the outside, that Tesla specifically has tried to keep people out of the beta program as much as possible. They want the minimum number of users to collect the data that they need. And they actually have a pretty good ability to collect data because they can run it in shadow mode. And so someone doesn't have to actually be opted into the beta program in order to be a data gathering node for the network. And so they have a robust ability to gather all the data that they need, but they do need a certain amount of humans using the system in order to do essentially what is the reinforcement learning with human feedback version for FSD. And so they need some users, but they want that user base to be whatever, as small as possible, to gather the sufficient data. And so they use pricing that is excessively high in order to keep people out of beta, not attract people into beta. And so I think that once they feel super, super confident in the safety of the system, that not only is it safer with humans that pay attention, but it's actually safer than humans even when humans are not paying attention, then they switch into a mode where we want as many users as possible, and we will sell you a set of functionality at whatever price that you find valuable, to where there is some sort of SaaS revenue being generated off of essentially the entire fleet. Now, what the ASP of that SaaS revenue is, kind of remains to be seen, and it will depend on how much value that driver assistant software is adding to the driver. But I think that's where we're headed, much more than robo taxis, as a that's going to be a stepping stone that we have to pass through in order to get to robo taxis. And it's an area that I don't hear really anyone else talking about, what that actual revenue opportunity is and what that's going to look like from a valuation perspective for the company as well.
And another market segment I see is the elderly to be able to take themselves to the doctor, or teenagers who are new behind the wheel of a car, inexperienced, like the collision avoidance and the safety. That could open up a huge market segment as well. Well, let's jump ahead. I'm going to share something because one thing that did pop out of the call yesterday that caused some confusion, and it's all about AI inference. Now, Elon Musk, I think it was, or somebody said they have the most efficient inference because some of the equipment on some of the cars is older, so they can process more data, more intelligence, more efficiently than any other platform on the world. Are you familiar with this? And could you tell the
Yes.
audience a bit about it?
Well, so there's two different ways to actually interpret what he said there, because this, something that's known in the artificial intelligence industry, is that there's a trade-off, that the more compute that you use to train a model, the less compute you need then to infer that model in the field. And so one of the things that this potentially says is that Tesla is the least training compute efficient AI company, but they're doing that specifically on purpose because they're trying to have the lightest weight possible inference efficiency. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing that they use so much compute on the training side of things. I do think that this is something that is important to be focused on, because if you think about all the devices that we run, whether it's your cell phone in your pocket to your laptop, all sorts of devices, and then increasingly, as we move into the future, more smart devices that are operating at the edge, that the less energy that those devices use on your person, you know, the less battery you have to carry around with you in order to do whatever that valuable service is that AI intelligence is helping you to do. And so I think it does serve a huge function to try and train the most complex model you can in the cloud, and then deploy to the edge the lightest weight and most powerful model that you can possibly deploy at the edge. And so that's what Tesla's really focused on doing. And when you think about driving, I mean, that's an incredibly difficult task. And so to be able to do it with something that is as simple as the FSD computer is highly impressive. And then, we'll have to see where George Hodson, AI go, but basically George is trying to replicate a scaled down version of the autopilot. It's really autopilot functionality is what he's trying to give people. But he's trying to accomplish that on a device that's essentially a cell phone, which is, even further lightweighting compared to the hardware 3 or hardware 4 computers in a Tesla.
He was the guy who tried to get a job working for Elon, wasn't it? And Elon said, "I'll give you X million if you can crack the code on this." Something like that.
Yes, he was. So, and he was also recently the most infamous intern at X after Elon took over, and he did a little bit of work there as well. He is the original jailbreaker of the iPhone back when he was 16 years old, and he's an exceptional coder, and someone that I really try to pay close attention to what he's doing, and also where he sees the future of AI. He's one of those people that I think helps me get insight into where the industry is moving and what is and is not going to be possible, especially with respect to the open source side of AI.
So it's pretty clear so far. We're going down the AI rabbit hole and bots and everything else, but Tesla is a robot on wheels. I've had a Tesla Model X for 5 years. I've had FSD beta and everything else. It never ceases to blow me away. And I don't have 12.2 yet, or 12.1. So do you agree Tesla is already, as Elon says, it's an AI robotics company and the car is a robot?
100%.
Okay, we got that out of the way. Now, let's talk about one of the bombshells from last night. I do have some notes I'll pop up just to make sure. And these are the things, just rough dictation of what he said. But basically, and I've modeled this. I've got CERN Basher on the channel next week to do more bot modeling. He's done a lot of work in this area. I did this with
Mm-hmm.
Herbert. But bot per Elon has the potential to far exceed anything else that Tesla can do combined. In addition, the biggest thing to ever hit the world. Do you agree with that statement last night? Because that took me aback. Well, I knew that, but it was nice to hear it from his voice.
Yes, I mean, he has made comments to that effect before, and I do the exponentiality of human robots. I mean, just artificial intelligence, robotics in general, is going to drastically change the face of the earth, the face of culture, the face of society. But the humanoid robot specifically is going to have an incredibly large impact, because its aim is to do work that humans do currently, and that is both exciting and disruptive and scary all at the same time. But because basically we have built the entire world and an incredible number of tools to interface with our human bodies and our human minds, that if we can replicate that with a mechanical body and an AI brain, that then those things really have the potential to do almost all of the work that humans do currently. And so it's that general interface, instead of being something that's a highly specific piece of technology that works in one use case, it is something that really is applicable across all industries, all types of work, and that is the key that makes this different. And so, I mean, it's hard to think of someone who would not appreciate, just think about all the people who thought, man, you know what I need? I need a clone of myself. Well, anyone who's ever had the thought of, I wish there was another me to share all this work with, can appreciate the fact that you would also like to have a robot that you could delegate tasks to in the same way, as long as it could do those tasks to the standard that you would like it to be done to. And so that's where this number, billions of robots, comes from, is that there's billions of people. And eventually, I think that there will be, numerous robots for every single person on the planet. And so you get into numbers of billions that is really kind of nutty. Now, I don't have any idea how long that future is from now, but the humanoid robot project as a whole, that there's going to be a whole number of companies pursuing, is going to be basically the tip of the spear for that acceleration of robotics, because it is such a general interface. It looks like you're on mute.
I did some modeling from a guy called Chris Camago, and I had assumed the bot wouldn't start shipping until the year 2027, 2028. I just updated it on the fly here, and you and I are going to model this in a week or two, hopefully, when dust settles down. But this is assuming they start to ship in 2026, even though
Can
he
you
says,
define ship for me? Are you talking about ship to internal Tesla use cases or external? What does that mean for you?
well, that's the question. I got the impression he meant ship to customers. So let's go back to these notes and let me make sure I'm sharing. Am I sharing the screen? Yes.
Yes.
So let's go through this first. First of all, one of the things that I see is what Elon's very good at doing is anticipating the future. And it's very clear, if you look at countries like Japan, they're going to be missing 40 million workers by the year 2040. China have the same problem. They don't have enough people to do jobs. So Chinese are going whole hog into building humanoid robots because they need to. The population is not making babies. It's a massive problem. And Elon's also spoken about that a lot. So he sees this, and he also has great respect for the Chinese and their manufacturing. He said, I think yesterday, that if the Chinese automakers were unleashed in the US, every American car company would be destroyed overnight if there were no tariffs, etc. So putting that aside, bots are coming, and that's become a very urgent issue. That's why he was in the lab in Palo Alto late last night or the night before. I think it was the night before now. But he wants to make the bots safe. He did say he would be delivering or shipping a good number or some number of Optimus in 2025. And I was like, whoa, I wasn't expecting this till 2027. I don't know what that means. Does it mean displacing the ones that BMW are trying to get from the other maker? I don't know. Also, he wants to make it very safe, and he wants them to do very basic generalized tasks, and they will use that same inference that we started talking about today. So this for me was an absolute bombshell, and I was blown away. It took my expectations 2 years to the present from the future, and I'd like to get your take on all of this. Do you believe they are putting everything they can into this? And also, one of the things he did stress was there is no company like Tesla when it comes to being very effective and efficient with resources, not just inference. So over to you. What do you think of all of this?
Yeah, I definitely agree that Tesla is in the prime position to create this bot, that they have all the pieces and they have so many use cases for it internally that they can do a lot of this development work and get this bot just way down the line of being incredibly useful for, you know, dangerous, dull, or repetitive work of Tesla's factories. So I'm interpreting when he said we plan to ship some number of and he's talking about volume, that is some significant number of volume at the end of 2025. I can't help but notice that's also the expected timeline for when the Gen 3 vehicle is supposed to begin ramping up. And so I'm thinking that that is internal deliveries to Tesla factories and getting it, actually using it as an integral part of the next generation vehicle platform manufacturing process. So I think that's the goal, is they want, maybe they'll start with some low number, 5% or 10% of the overall stations that normally would be manned by a human. They would like to be manned. That's my read on this situation. We'll see if that comes true. I don't think that Tesla is going to need to sell these to external customers. I honestly don't expect them to sell them to external customers until, yeah, maybe closer to what you're thinking, 2027, 2028. Like, they will go through a lot of internal development. They will end up saving a lot of money. This will actually flow through to the bottom line for them far in advance of when they actually deliver the first ones to customers, unless there is a specific relationship that Elon has with somebody who is able to convince him personally to allow them to kind of get in on the development process of Optimus and to be able to use those internally. But I think that's what it would take. And, there are a number of business people that he has a close relationship with that um, might be able to convince him of something like that. And we certainly know, based on the conversation that Brett Adcock was having with Herbert the other day, that they have been approached by, he talked about having conversations with 50 of the Fortune 100 CEOs, that there's the labor shortage is off the charts, and every major company has an incredible felt need to do whatever they can to just boost their labor content as much as possible, or not their labor content, but to boost their workforce as much as possible. And so there's going to be lots of people approaching anyone. Like, Figure already has people approaching them. All of the other robot companies are going to have lots and lots of partners that are approaching them. And so there's not going to be any lack of incoming to Tesla for people trying to get access to this technology.
Yeah, you hit on so many different Pandora's boxes right there. One of them is very interesting, is the confluence of timelines. Model 2, unbox process, robot, all at the same time. I didn't put that together in my head until you mentioned it. Tell us more about
Well, it's
that.
something that Tom Zhu mentioned explicitly in the shareholder day last year, that they were talking, or maybe it wasn't Tom Zhu, maybe it was Lars, but as they were talking about the unbox process and how you get more people, the ratio of people to the subassembly that were being worked on, you could get a higher number of people to that. He said, or Optimus robots. And that was the seed that tells you that this is exactly what they're thinking about, and they've been thinking about it as a part of the unbox manufacturing process since the time that they initially conceptualized this revolution in manufacturing technology.
Because as you know, I walked the Cybertruck line for probably nearly 2 hours, and we made a summary video of that. But that whole line is completely automated. There's no place for a worker there. It's just monitored by engineers upstairs using cameras. So you're talking about the sub-assembly. Would that be building the steering stuff before it gets taken by a robot and installed in the car? What exactly would the role be for these robots?
That's going to be a lot of things that are flexible are hard to automate. And so things like wiring, or, filling up hydraulics, or there are a number of issues that could arise. Something like welding is not going to be, obviously casting is going to be all done in an automated fashion. Um, but you can almost think of, there are things that might be easier to do with a human form factor if you're not paying a human to do that. If the cost of labor, I mean, this is, everyone thinks about how much money a bot could make based on how much we pay people in these jobs currently. But the thing is that manufacturing of bots will be so scalable that what will end up happening in reality is that what we pay to have that labor done will be dramatically reduced. So there's going to be incredible deflationary pressure throughout the supply chain. And the costs of the goods and services that we all consume are going to just be eviscerated. And so, someone who makes 50, $60,000 a year, or $40,000 a year, even $30,000 a year, will suddenly have access to the type of lifestyle that someone who makes 150,000 has access to today, because the prices of all those things are going to be, just dramatically reduced. Um, and so in that scenario, maybe it makes more sense to actually just deploy, instead of having to set up these fancy, complicated, purpose-built automation assembly lines that you have to have an engineer like a Scott Walter go in and simulate how do all these robot arms interface with one another. How do we make sure that we choreograph this dance perfectly so that we don't create any hiccups? That you just say, you define loosely, these are the tasks that need to be done. This is the order that they need to be done in. And you can tell, okay, I'm going to need, 100 bots basically to do those tasks. And as long as they can do it with a high enough level of accuracy, then you can just unleash this general bot workforce, and it dramatically reduces the time and the capital investment that it takes to set up something in a manufacturing setting, because you don't have to do all that complicated planning beforehand. Now, if you're going to make that thing in super high volumes, at some point there's going to be a payback on going ahead and doing that work. But even those more complicated KUKA robots and all the traditional automation equipment that exists in an automotive factory today, that's also going to be getting much smarter with artificial intelligence at the same time that bots are getting smarter. And so that will also be getting easier and more accessible as time moves on. And so it's somewhat unclear until Tesla really shows us exactly, what's the bot contribution going to be, or we'll say the bot slash human contribution to the labor that goes into manufacturing a next gen vehicle. Um, you know, I think right now they're probably involved in assembling the glass, like making sure that as the glass comes in, that it gets seated properly before it gets pressed in there. Those types of operations, anything where there's going to be something, sticky or flexible, or um, or require a lot of dexterity in your hands to do some, like putting connectors together and those types of things.
Yeah, and I noticed the hands as well. By the way, nearly 2,000 people watching live. Everybody, please, this is Hans Nelson. His information is below. He is the AI whisperer. So we're going to be bouncing all around. So the dexterity of the hands in this robot is quite impressive. But let's get back to probably when I share this little meme. I'm not a big meme professional, but Tesla meme time. This looks really bad. Relax, it's already priced in. This kind of the market today with the stock falling. We hear all this goodness, and then we know that literally this is coming. This is the exponentiality, just the pricing model of the bot alone. And I get a lot of flack. It's like, oh, that's just hopium or whatever. It's impossible. This has been vetted with two experts, and I'm now going to ask you a question. Can you talk to the audience about exponentiality and why, in your opinion, do humans have a hard time wrapping their head around it? Like you talked about bots scaling bots and then abundance, but how does that come back to stock price?
Yeah. So, I mean, Tesla is actually really a perfect case study of exponentiality. And it's funny to see how the price of the stock actually correlates to that exponential curve. And so Elon sets out to solve huge problems, but he takes those problems kind of one step at a time. And so if you look at the history of Tesla, really the only thing that I can tell that has a massive impact on Tesla's share price, apart from S&P inclusion, which is sort of its own little bubble, is the flow through of technology solving a problem to the point that you see the financial results and showing up as profitability for the company. And this has been a wave that they've gone through a couple of times. And so if you look back at 2012, 2013, once Tesla finally launched the Model S, it was reviewed and found to be, I think it was Motor Trend Car of the Year. And then they showed their first surprise quarter of profitability, and they showed, okay, this is a self-funding, sustainable company with this product. The market loved that. They assigned a ton of value to it. I think it's, I just like to think about it in rough orders of magnitude. It was roughly 10x move in that 2012 to 2013 timeframe that the market said, okay, we don't believe this is possible. We don't think you can do this. And then the switch flips and they're like, oh, you already did it. And this is already a done deal and it's sustainable. Okay, we'll assign the value. And it gets a little bit, I would say, frothy, a little bit bubbly and overambitious. And so it goes up really high. And then from there, you just see consolidation from 2012 all the way to 2019. And really, all of that was before I became an investor in the stock. But I got in 2017, 2018, and I honestly feel like 2022, 2023, 2024 feels in a lot of ways very similar to 2016, 2017, 2018, where we can see all of those leading indicators that I spoke about earlier, all the building blocks getting set in place to make a large move forward. But we haven't seen the financial results yet. We know that they're working on the foundation. We know that they're making continued progress, and we can see that, but we don't see any financial results. The same thing happened as they went through the Model 3 production hell. Like, we knew that they're going to make the Model 3. It's going to be an incredible product. Everyone's going to want one. It's going to be so affordable. All of that was true, but it also came with the risk that, hey, maybe they actually go bankrupt in the process of trying to ramp this thing, and almost happened. And so the market was right to be concerned about their ability to execute on that plan. But once they got to the other side of it and they showed profitability from that, and then it just compounded into, so we had Model 3 profitability that quickly converted into Model Y profitability, then the opening of the Shanghai plant and the opening of this whole new market, that becoming profitable on a timeline that was shockingly fast. All of those things kind of just in rapid succession contributed to the next 10x move in 2019 through 2021. Now, in 2021, we got really frothy again. You can throw in the S&P inclusion there as well. And we're just doing this consolidation sideways, but all of the pieces are getting put in place. And I think that it's very likely, based on the way that we see artificial intelligence technology working, that if they can get FSD working, they'll probably be able to get the bot working pretty well at roughly the same time, plus or minus a couple years. And so we could very well be in a situation where we finally see massive financial results flowing through to the bottom line from energy, FSD SaaS, even if that's short of robotaxi, and Optimus, through whether that's just reduction in COGS in the vehicles that they're producing in the next gen vehicle platform or not. And then also, the next gen vehicle platform. So we have 4 different things that can all contribute huge amounts of cash flow to the bottom line, to profitability. And when we begin to see those first inklings of profitability hitting the bottom line, that's when I think the next 10x move gets initiated and we're off to the races.
And that's what people are very impatient about. You can even see it just today. You know, Tesla, you and I tell people there's nothing but good news. I mean, when I started investing in Tesla, it was during that Model 3 pain period, 2017, 2019. Total investment could have gone to zero, but I believed. And the point is, investing is risky, but you got to
Mm-hmm.
be in early and you got to be in hard if you want exponential gains. That's the risk you take. Otherwise, you can go buy a utility company like Pacific Gas and Electric or whatever and
Mm-hmm.
get your 4% per year. Good luck with that. But I'm much more about much more dramatic results. Now, this step change, we have everything coming together at the same time. Wall Street still doesn't see it. Even Dan Ives today, a month ago, he was all, it's an AI robotics company. It's going to be the new Apple with services. Today, it's like, no, it's a car company. Margins. We want more. Like he just flipped his tune like that. And these guys, like I mentioned, with their little pencils and their guidance, if they don't get it, they get so upset and they throw their toys out the window and move on. But now, because Tesla is so retail oriented, now they're all pissed off as well, like the analysts. And I don't know where to go from here. Like that, the stuff I got from that meeting was interesting. And I've got another slide where there's so much to talk about here. This is from the KOBEISSI. I think they said it very eloquently, far more eloquent than I ever could say. I'd like your thoughts on this. And they wrote this morning. The beauty of Tesla is that it's never been a conventional company. Tesla does not operate like a traditional company with quarterly results tailored to what Wall Street wants. Rather, it's a story about innovation and vision from Elon Musk. And Wall Street's definition of a perfect company, it does not fit that bill, and Elon does not placate Wall Street at all. In addition, it's not just a car company, it's a robotics company. We've figured that out during this video today. And betting against Tesla's never worked in the long run. So, what are your take on this from KOBEISSI? I thought it was beautifully written.
Yeah, I love how concise that is. And I think that that rule of thumb is good. Like, never bet against Tesla in the long run. Like, you can win in the short run. And sometimes, if your time horizon, like, if I needed my money over the next year, I wouldn't be putting it in Tesla, honestly, because I have no idea what we're going to be in for this coming year. And it could be bad. And I wouldn't want to take a 50% haircut on something, but I don't need that money in the next year. That's not what I'm investing for. I'm investing for the long term. And so that's one of the reasons why Tesla has attracted such a large retail base, is because a lot of retail investors do have much longer time horizons. And that's an advantage that anyone out there who is a retail investor has, is that you can think about companies and technology over a time horizon that no one on Wall Street is allowed to have. And you can use that as an arbitrage opportunity to invest in things that they're not going to invest in now, that absolutely will perform if you can just be patient. And so you can be paid for two things: patience, well, really three things. Discretion, you have to find the right thing, combined with patience, combined with the ability to stomach volatility. If you can combine those three things, you have an incredible opportunity to make massive gains over the long term. And of course, that's not financial advice.
Yeah, and there's so much analogy as well with crypto. What I also do, you get in early, get in hard, and the volatility will make you sick. But if you are patient, you win. So let's look at a couple more quick slides, and then we'll go through a quick fire round. And I hope you're okay for time. One of these is this. I'd like you to talk to us real quick about S curves. Like Norway, I see as the canary in the mine. They are now 82% market share last week for BEVs. And the rest of the world will follow this pattern, but few people, just like exponentiality, they don't understand S curves and how BEV adoption is coming fit, fast, and furious. What's your take on this?
Yeah. So S curves are essentially exponentials. Like, this is the practical way that exponentials play out as far as technologies transitioning from one technology to another technology. And that there's three phases of the S curve. There's the initial phase where the technology just is not that competitive and it's not that compelling, and the only people that are excited about it are the early adopter types. And then they through iterations and refinement and meeting those customers' needs and making the product better, are able to really refine it and get the cost down to where then the value proposition starts to become very clear that this is going to be superior to the existing technology. And that's where the S curve bends up and goes into this near vertical section of just incredible adoption. Um, and I would say that we're really at that point now with EVs that, obviously Norway is a lot further down this road. In the US, we're at what I think between 15 and 20% adoption. So almost down there at the bottom of this ginormous curve here. And that's going to transition very soon. And these types of things, I would encourage anyone to go read Tony Seba's work, or the book Brighter by Adam Dorr from Rethink X. He's Tony Seba's director of research. That those are great resources to help you understand how these transitions from one technology to another technology work and why they are predictable. You get into concepts like Wright's law, that tell you that a technology is going to get cheaper at a very predictable rate. And if you can predict when the price point of one technology actually gets cheaper than the incumbent technology, that's how you figure out exactly when you're going to hit that knee in the adoption curve and when it's going to go vertical, so that you can do that. And so what we see with Norway is that for their market, the cost and value proposition of an EV really exceeded an ICE vehicle somewhere in 2017. And that's where you start going vertical with this adoption. And this is something that is inevitable globally over the next 10, 20 years. It's just a matter of getting all the supply chains built up and continuing to ship more products so that those prices can come down further and further.
Yeah, and I think BEV adoption in the US is only like 7 or 12%. It's very early here. But if you look at California, it's 25%. It's California's like a mini Norway, but still 5 years behind Norway. There's another piece to this as well, because not only does Tesla do very well at being in the right place at the right time, but also reducing costs. This is another quick slide here. And to pull so much cost from 39,500 a car to about 36,000 in 5 quarters is stunning. This is something that traditional car makers cannot do. And in addition, Tesla can turn on pure margin by selling FSD to an owner of a car for $10,000. Can you map for the audience here how far ahead Tesla are in terms of cost control, manufacturing prowess, and margin turn on capabilities? I think everything you said is money, and I love what you've done, but I'm kind of trying to get you to give the audience some comfort
Mhm.
here that there is only one game in town.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I do have to caveat right here is that Q4 2022 number was probably, kind of an artificial peak based on supply chain disruption that we had coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
So that does skew this data a little bit, but regardless, it does not change the fact that Tesla is a world leader in driving out costs. I love the uh, shareholder day where they brought up the supply chain team and they talked about how deeply they get embedded in their supply chain to help drive out pennies. And it's not just inside their facilities, but also with their suppliers. And we heard further comments about that yesterday on the earnings call from the entire supply chain team about all of the areas that they're pursuing to just remove cost from the system. And because there's some other pieces to that no other company operates with the speed and agility that, and I use agile as a technical term. So anyone who understands software understands that there is agile software development, and that is, dramatically different than the traditional ways that projects are planned. That's called waterfall. And almost all major hardware manufacturing companies are so old that they all use waterfall project planning today. This is why you have a 5 to 7 year development cycle from other major car companies like Ford and GM, where it'll take them 5 to 7 years before you'll see a new version of that vehicle. And what we see from Tesla is that they're making modifications to that vehicle and shipping it on a daily basis. And so it's that ability to bring the agile project planning ethos into a hardware manufacturing company and turn it to 11, operate with then the motivation that comes from having such a large existential mission, and a leader in Elon who is balls to the wall nuts in his ability to just outwork and outthink everyone. That also turns up the motivation. And so they are using the right architecture for the company to move at incredible speed. People are empowered with the authority to make the changes necessary to actually do the best thing to remove cost from those vehicles on the line day in and day out.
Yeah. Well,
And
one thing,
so,
yeah, in fact, Jeff Lutz has done some great work on talking about how they actually influence the supply chain. And maybe it's probably a wrong word to use, but they squeeze it and they promise them things. Like, the supply chain that supplies traditional ICE car makers, they have half the intelligence to know that they're going out of business. So they need to cozy up to Elon Musk and
mhm.
Tesla. So I think that's extremely important. And when it
Yeah.
comes to capacity,
Well,
sorry.
I was just going to say, I love Jeff's point about the fact that as they're ramping into the next gen vehicle, so we can expect a lot of supply chain costs to be driven out even before they start. Like, once they start manufacturing the next gen vehicle platform, they have rethought everything from the ground up about how they're going to make this vehicle. And it's going to be so much cheaper than the current cars. They're going to have tons of opportunity for market. And when they first begin to ramp it up, the price, we got to remember that every time Elon announces a price for a product, it starts much higher than that, and then it comes down to roughly that price over time. And the same is going to be true for the next generation vehicle, that while the price target may be in the $25,000 range, they're probably going to begin selling for $35,000, and the COGS on those are going to be way low. And so there's going to be incredible margins that we're going to see when the next gen vehicle platform ramps up. Now, it's that process will be difficult, and they will, some of that extra margin that they'll be getting at the beginning will be consumed by the ramp process that is somewhat inefficient. But because they've got all these manufacturers that they're and OEMs and suppliers that are going to be contributing to that ramp, they're establishing those relationships, and they're leveraging, hey, 2 years from now, we're going to be ramping this product. The upper goal is 4 million units a year worth of sales. If you want that business, I need you to do what you can for me on these parts that we're currently buying for our Model 3, Model Y platform. And so, just from a supply chain thing, even if what they're doing is getting their suppliers to somewhat subsidize their cost today in order to win business tomorrow, there's even more room to reduce cost in the near term there and have that affect Model 3 and Model Y pricing and profitability of the company today.
One of the things I always try and inform people who are investing is to think ahead, think to where things are going in the future. And I always look at leaders of companies. And one thing that Elon Musk is incredibly good at is anticipating what's going to happen in the future. He anticipated battery electric vehicles. Nobody else is talking about it. He's been talking about a lack of humans, negative birth rates all around the world. Again, enter the bot. And now everything, the electrification of everything with the AI revolution and the automation revolution and autonomy revolution, all of these S curves colliding at the same time. Do you believe that's exactly what he's positioned Tesla for with all his other companies too? Or is it just a lucky accident? And is there another leader like him anywhere in the world, or has there been ever?
I would say I'll start at the end and kind of work backwards. I would say that there have been very few, if any, leaders at his level. Um, in all of history. The one person that I have been incredibly impressed with, who I think is underappreciated, is actually Jensen Huang. That NVIDIA is led incredibly well. He has foreseen the future as well, built the products required to actually be in the perfect position at the perfect time in this huge inflection point in an exponential curve of artificial intelligence. So I would say he is another one. There are, a few other exceptional CEOs around today. Jeff Bezos was one who was incredible at seeing the future. And one of the great things about Jeff was that he really was a huge first mover in bridging. There had been a lot of innovation in just the realm of bits and digital things. And so he was able to bridge a company that innovated both in the digital space, but then translated that into real world impact as well. Um, Building out the Amazon system. And so he's another one. Um, Going back to whether or not this is an accident on Elon's part, I don't think that it is. I think that he thinks about what are the biggest problems that humanity is going to face in the future. And that is really the base layer that all of this other stuff arises from. That's how he landed in the web when it was time to start Zip2. And then furthermore, when he did X the first time, that became PayPal, is that he's thinking about, I know that there's going to be major things that impact humanity. One of them is going to be the transition to sustainable energy. One of them is going to be DNA sequencing. He didn't really want to be involved in that. The other one was going to be space exploration and then internet technology. And he was intuitive enough to sense when is the time for the web. And so he stepped into the arena to enter the web at the right time for the web. And I think that that is exactly how we have arrived here to the humanoid robot. Is he sees this problem of just declining birth rates, not having the ability to make things. And this is a huge felt problem that he has in his own life, trying to hire good people, trying to do business in Sparks, Nevada, and there's just not a good workforce to draw from. This is a consideration that they have to have every time that they're setting up a new manufacturing facility, wherever it is that they are doing that. And he just recognizes that right now is the perfect time, that we have all of the technologies converging to make this possible, just like the telecommunications technology that kind of was the backbone that the internet ran on had all created the perfect backdrop for the web to take off in the late 90s and early 2000s.
It makes so much sense. I'm glad you shared all that stuff. So we've got a couple of other items we haven't spoken about yet. Let me pop up this one. This is energy storage. Now, one of the things that's very profound for me, I remember Elon Musk, which is deadly correct, but years ago he said the utility energy business is 100 times larger than the global car business. I remember those simple numbers, but these numbers are quite impressive. I think Tesla energy storage makes up about 13% of the bottom line right now. Is that correct? Um, and the growth has been very impressive, and the Shanghai shop is opening real soon too. So, what's your take on energy storage? Nothing burger, or should we just focus on bots and AI?
Um, I don't think it's a nothing burger to Tesla stock at all. I don't know that it will have as much of an impact on the financials if you have a 10 to 20-year time horizon as AI and robotics will, but it definitely has the potential to be a much larger impact to the financials than automotive if you strip out FSD as part of that. And so I think for those reasons, it's important to look at, but also just from, like, if you care about the mission of transitioning the world to sustainable energy, then you absolutely care about watching what energy deployments are doing, because really grid scale battery storage is the difference between us being able to adopt large amounts of renewable energy that is cheaper than all of the fossil fuels that we have used in the past, and be able to deploy those. So, like, if you want to live in a future 10 years from now where you pay 10% of what you pay today for electricity, then you care about how many of these batteries are getting deployed into the grid, because these batteries are what makes it possible for us to generate whatever energy wherever and whatever time that is most efficient to do that with whatever technology makes the most sense, and then deploy it when it's needed, instead of this crazy system that we have right now where we have this very complicated network of energy assets that have to be perfectly matched with, this is exactly how much energy is being used at this moment, and we have to be producing exactly that much energy at this moment, because there's no ability to store energy in between where it's produced and where it's used. And so if we can store that energy, then all of a sudden we can decouple these things, and the whole system gets to be way, way simpler, way more efficient, and way cheaper.
Okay, let's talk about limiting factor now that we're on the topic of batteries. Is it a limiting factor? Got the Model 2 coming. They believe each Giga will be able to pop out at least 500,000 units. And they're talking about three of those coming in. That's 1.5 million cars. There's already existing capacity for 2.2 million, 2.3 million based on my calculations. Then you've got the mega packs sucking up batteries. The semi truck is going to suck up batteries. Do you believe they've got that problem covered? I know he's been talking about lithium refining and securing resources. He spoke a lot, very high way, about Panasonic being a solid partner. They may be the first to
Mhm.
get the Optimus bot too, as you say, people close to them. But is that a limiting factor?
I know that, people who pay attention to this very closely think that lithium is going to be a limiting factor in the back half of this decade. I don't claim to know more than they do about this. The one thing that I would say is we've seen so many companies really hit the gas on their plans for battery electric vehicles, so to speak, and now they're pulling back on that. And so there has been investment made into supply chain, that there's an opportunity for those who are moving forward aggressively with their plans to suck up supply that was originally allocated by other players. And so I really don't know how much of an impact that's going to have. But if it ends up being a limiting factor for Tesla's growth plans, I think it's marginal and small and only lasts a relatively short period of time. Maybe it delays the overall plans by a year, 2 years, 3 years at most. And so that's kind of how I think about the downside of what that limitation might end up being. I don't think that it's going to be fundamental or have any meaningful impact if you go out to 10, 15, 20 years.
And then there's companies out there like Toyota who've lost their way so many times over the last decade. Like they nailed it with the Prius hybrid car. But then, as people say, if you got an ice car and a battery car and put them together, you got double the complexity. It just makes no sense. And a lot of the ice makers are doubling down on hybrids, which makes no sense. But now Toyota are talking about hydrogen. That's obviously sitting on top of a weapon makes no sense. But they have a solid state battery they believe could be a breakthrough. Is there anything there, or is it just ignore Toyota?
One of the things that you can't ignore about Toyota is that they are deeply interwoven with the Japanese government. And so the ability of a company government hybrid entity to exist kind of defies the normal market pressures that a company that is not attached at the hip to a government has to succumb to. So I don't know how to handicap Toyota moving forward. I would say that we haven't seen them making the right moves technologically for a long time, and I don't know what that translates into moving forward. I mean, we could have said the same thing about GM back in the 2000s, and they managed to still be around based on getting bailed out by the government in 2008. And so, I expect those types of situations to actually come back up again over the next 10 years, as a lot of these large OEMs do run into major financial challenges.
Yeah. And Toyota was brilliant at manufacturing, world class. And anybody who owns a Toyota is like, this is the most reliable thing ever. I remember
Mhm.
somebody once said to me,
I still drive one.
yeah, my God. There's somebody once said to me, if you ever you're in a nuclear war, you need to be in, is it a Toyota Land Cruiser or something? Their big SUV. It's like
Yeah.
indestructible. Will get you anywhere. But getting back to manufacturing, a couple of interesting things fell out of the call yesterday, and that was the new unbox process is head and shoulders step change from anything the world in manufacturing has ever seen. And it's like he doesn't say stuff like they might get his timelines messed up, but when he says something like that, they have a serious surprise up their sleeve coming in 2025. What do you think that could be? We know it's unboxed. We know this bot's going to be on the line, but what else? Could it be like knocking out a car every 10 seconds? No steps, no cycles, just boom, gone, boom, gone. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for anyone who really wants to understand the details, go back to the shareholder day and watch their presentation on what the unbox process was going to be, and you'll get a good sense of it. But where I would just compress it down to is that they're throwing out the obstacles that have held back automotive manufacturing for 100 years. They're starting with a clean sheet, and they're going to be manufacturing this product in a way that allows them to do things parallel to a degree that has never been possible before. So instead of you being held up by someone who's, in the line down ahead of you and they messed up their thing, and now the whole line slows down because that one thing messed up. Now you've got this whole flow of things proceeding in parallel, and if something goes down, well, then all that stuff just kind of goes around it. And so the number of bottlenecks and the number of things that are going to slow things down is going to be dramatically reduced. I believe that cycle time absolutely will be increased, and that, yeah, the ability to automate it is going to be through the roof as well. It's just going to be the most transformative part is going to be way, way, way cheaper. And the goals that they set for being able to produce more vehicles in less space with less time for less money, that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, apparently 1/4 of the plant at Austin, which you probably know very well, is cordoned off. And that's where they're testing that line. I was in the other corner where the Cybertruck is, and I was surprised how short. And like it's 3 stories high and double way around, but how short the line was. It's about a third of a mile or a quarter of a mile. Anyway, that's it will be exciting to watch. With everything that Tesla has, and they anything they get into, they dominate. Why are they not valued like an AI company, AI stock, whether it be Google or Nvidia? Nvidia, 336 PE ratio, Tesla 65. I might be wrong on the PE for
Mm-hmm.
Nvidia. So you 365 or 336. Um, but if you were to bet today, somebody held something to your head, what is the number one AI stock in the world today and for the next 10 years? What would that be?
Definitely would be Tesla, because they go after the biggest it's not just AI, it's how do we take AI and apply it to the biggest problems possible, solve the hardest challenges, and produce the most value for customers. And no one is more aggressive in trying to do that than Elon and Tesla are,
Why does nobody see that? Why
because
just
people are looking
us
at the next
retail
year or 2 years.
fools? Yeah. Are we missing something or are they missing something? Or is it just because, as you mentioned, they need instant gratification? They live quarter to quarter and that's how they're designed.
I think that, yeah, that's what it is. That, if you live on Wall Street, your performance, you're paid based on how well you predict the next quarter, the next year. And basically, everyone when we talked about that quote earlier, that Elon doesn't do anything in the perfect way that Wall Street wants him to do. The perfect way that Wall Street wants people to do things is focused on the short term, and that is because everyone in Wall Street is paid in the short term. So everyone's incentives are aligned in short term. And so when you think about it from an economics perspective and you see that all of the actors are incentivized on a short term basis, it makes complete and total sense that no one is able to think about the long term in a sensible and reasonable way. And so I think that's really what it boils down to.
It's like what Charlie Munger said, show me the incentives, I show you the outcome, or words to that effect.
Yep.
I'm not sure exactly. All right, so people don't understand Tesla very much. It is the top AI company. Let's talk about AI for a second, and Grok and AI versus Bard versus GPT-4. I've used them all. Actually, one of the things that really impresses me about Grok is you get access to real-time information, which is a game changer. There's no point in looking at an archive from 3 years ago. The world has changed. What's your take? Do you think Grok would smash GPT-4 in time, considering the rate of development?
I think that there's going to be two different use cases over time for these two different systems. And I don't think that they are going to really compete in a meaningful way. Just like, there's room for Google and Apple to kind of coexist, and they have different business models. I 100% agree that I don't use ChatGPT much. I normally do use Grok, but the reason that I do that is because I am looking for information. And so I am asking it to find me information that is somewhere. I mean, Twitter's database of real-time information is almost second to none. And so using Grok as a means to query that is an incredible tool for me. And it doesn't always produce the best results. Sometimes I do have to use Google as well, but I'm surprised at the potential of that technology to disintermediate search, and I really enjoy it. I think that the agents piece on GPT, or that OpenAI is developing as part of their current offering, is a huge potential that goes off in a whole separate direction. And if they can make agents really useful, there's just not a whole lot of crossover between that and something that is meant to be a an incredible accurate understanding of the most up-to-date information in the world. And there's tons of room for both of those things to be wildly successful. I think you're still on mute.
Thank you for that. There was a stunning admission at the WEF in Davos, and very anti WEF, but I think it was Emma Tucker, the Wall Street Journal chief editor in chief, and she's admitted, I can't said, we owned the news, we controlled the news, we were the gatekeepers, but now we've lost control. And she didn't say X directly, but she said social media outlets now control the news cycle. That was refreshingly honest and brutally true. Did you pick up on that, or and did that stun you as much as it stunned me?
So I didn't hear that. It doesn't surprise me at all. There's an incredible book by Martin Gurry called The Revolt of the Public that I would highly recommend people reading. That really is his. He was an analyst for the CIA, and he watched this, what he called the information tsunami, just transform the landscape of information in total over the last 10 years. And it really was led by social media. And so he was analyzing events like the Arab Spring, and how in the past, the governments and the centralized powers, they really controlled the flow of information. And because there was not very much information available, that was not very difficult to do. But in the age of the internet and social media, especially, all of a sudden, tons of people can start communicating directly with one another, and they don't have to rely on that information that is monitored and modified and edited by someone with a very specific agenda who has a very specific position of power. And that basically transformed the world. And so this is just a continued, I would say, act three of that play that Martin Gurry describes in that book.
I love that because that ties in as well directly to something somebody said recently, that if the governments didn't control the narrative in the past, a lot of catastrophes wouldn't have happened. But when you put the power in the hands of the people, they share knowledge at a much faster pace. And now with technology, we can do that much quicker. That takes me to, it's no secret that the elites, the governments, the incumbents, the manufacturers, the telco companies, the media companies, Elon is pissing everybody off. Um, could the counter narrative keep Tesla down for? I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but you brought me here. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it can have an impact on the stock in the short term, but I also strongly believe in the Warren Buffett saying that, in the short term, the stock market is like a voting
Voting
machine.
machine.
And so that is a voting machine
Yeah.
pressure. In the long term, it's a weighing machine. And so, if you have the benefit of having long time frames, and this is another reason why I don't try to invest in the short term, is because I don't understand what all the factors are going to be in the vote. But I do understand what the factors are going to be when I look at how a company is going to be weighed over time. And so, yes, I 100% believe that that factors in actually pretty heavily to the day to day up and down volatility swings of the stock. But I don't think that that's something that will have any impact on Elon's ability to execute meaningfully over 10 years.
In fact, I have a counter theory. I think when you look at how everybody goes after him, like the media and the FUD and the attacks, that actually motivates him even more. You agree with that? Or
I would 100% agree with that. That yes, he has this chip on his shoulder that goes back to his childhood about being bullied or being persecuted, and he takes that and turns it into fuel to go out there and execute. And I mean, it's definitely not the most healthy emotional dynamic, but this is actually something that is very common for people who are high level achievers. Michael Jordan is a great example, that all of the things that he took personally that fueled him to put in two, three, four, five times the amount of work that the next person would put in, so that when it came to that moment of pressure, he was in the zone and was able to perform flawlessly. And would I want to be Michael Jordan, and would I want to carry all those chips on my shoulder around my entire life in order to do that? I don't know. But thank God we do have those people who are willing to do that, who really do move the world forward in meaningful ways.
I think it was Michael Jordan, who I've met before at his restaurant in Chicago. I actually watched him play basketball. First time ever in Chicago watching basketball. Didn't know basketball. Didn't know what I was looking at till later in life. It was very sad. But it was Bruce Lee. He said, you got to watch for somebody that practices the same move 10,000 times. And I think Michael Jordan got that from Bruce Lee about certain types of shots, if I'm not mistaken. But I could be wrong on that. Speaking of FUD, I'm trying to think in multiple dimensions, getting, I think, close to the end here. Thank you so much for being so patient with us. I could talk to you all day. Hertz, like you hear the FUD about, oh, they're defleeting their EVs after buying a ton of them. But yeah, like when you read that, you think, okay, nobody will ever rent an electric car. There's two angles to this. One, the truth, they sell cars after a certain number of miles. That's normal. That's what they're doing. They're not defleeting, from what I know. Second of all, could Hertz be threatened by the kind of robo-taxi threat down the line, or their whole rental car business?
I would think that they should definitely be having conversations about FSD with Elon and the Tesla team, and try and figure out how that can be something that they can actually benefit from, rather than be something that threatens their business. I would agree on the depreciation of the vehicles is something that unfortunately is really having an outsized impact on Hertz. And a lot of that is just driven by the fluctuations in macro that they happen to buy these vehicles at the peak of auto inflation. And now they're having to offload them after really that bubble pricing has worn off. And a lot of people are having to take a haircut on, anyone who's really trying to sell a car that they bought for way more than they would buy that car new for today as they're trying to trade into their next vehicle. This is a challenge that everyone is facing, and Hertz is no different than everyone else on that front. And so that's having a large impact. The other thing is that when a retail consumer buys a Tesla, they there's a learning curve that they have to go through, but it's not a very long learning curve, and they kind of get everything figured out, and it doesn't affect their ownership experience over the lifetime of that vehicle. And they're not going to continue to make that mistake that's going to cause a problem for that vehicle or damage that vehicle over the long term. In the rental fleet, as EVs are still relatively new to most consumers, most people that rent a Tesla from Hertz, it's going to be the first time they've ever driven a Tesla. And so, the types of reliability, repair, and damage issues that you're going to run into when you have a car that drives 100,000 miles, and of those 100,000 miles, 70,000 of them were with a brand new EV driver. You can understand how that's going to cause issues that normal people are not going to run into, and expenses for the company. And so it really is an unfortunate situation, because I really appreciate the fact that Hertz was willing to make this bold move to bring these in there, because I think that that is actually a really valuable service for people to be able to try out an EV as a rental vehicle before they decide, is this something that works for my family? Is this something that works for my personal daily use needs? And yeah, they're really having to kind of take it on the chin right now. But I think as adoption grows, that's going to be less of a factor. And obviously, I think that we're in a different economic cycle right now, and so they shouldn't have the same depreciation challenges moving forward that they've had in the past either. And so I think this actually, if they had made this move today instead of 2 years ago, I think that their results would be dramatically different than they were over this specific time period.
One thing that blew me away in Austin, I always talked to the Uber drivers, and I said, and they were all Model Ys, a couple of Model 3s. And I said, so did you buy this? Or do you rent it? Do you lease it? I said, no, it's a Hearst deal. $2,000 a month, all in. All the miles you want. No charging. Charging what you got to pay for. But they'll change the tires, any issues, it's all covered. And the insurance is a big thing for the Uber drivers. But the Tesla Uber drivers would tell me they would cover their 2,000 a month if they work the first 3 days. The rest of the month is gravy. So you're
Mm-hmm.
making 2 grand in 3 days? I said, yeah. And they saved, one guy said he used to have to go to the gas station twice a day. He drove a Suburban before, and he was spending $170 twice a day because they leave the engine running all the time for air conditioning and stuff. And he said with the Tesla, it's a fraction. So he was blown away by that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, second last question, and then I'll let you go.
Hey,
Sorry, I've
I'm
got.
good. You don't have
Yeah.
to cut it off on my account. So,
Oh, you're. Thank you so much for your time. And don't forget, Hansi Nelson, link below. Follow him if you want to get smarter. Um, Tesla Optimus versus Nvidia Eureka versus Google RTX. You got Boston Dynamics. They've been making robots for 32 years. Optimus is already clearly ahead. And the big advantage that Tesla has is not only the battery technology, the neural net, the brain, and also the manufacturing prowess. Do you think any of these other players could even come close to touching Tesla on the robot?
I think that there's so much room in this marketplace, and the need is so great. Like, if you just think about it as tension, that there's so many people that are going to need so many bots so fast that a lot of people are going to make stuff, and there are so many opportunities for those bots to actually be financially viable early on, that you'll see a ton of activity, and that people will find financial success, and that the market desire for this product is going to outstrip the supply for a long time to come. That said, no, I don't think that anyone has all of the right pieces in the way that Tesla does, that I think that the development of FSD software gives them a leg up in developing the brains for Optimus. Obviously, there's a lot of other great AI companies that are getting into this space, and we have seen, DeepMind is an incredible research and development group. And even though I'm not excited about Google as a company for a number of other reasons, I'm extremely impressed with DeepMind and their abilities. And they can turn a lot of the research that they've done in the direction of robotics, and they can really advance the field. And one of the things that we know about them is a lot of times whatever work they do ends up getting open sourced. And so I think that there's a huge opportunity for some incredible cutting edge work to come out of DeepMind, go into the open source realm, and then have a large impact in this field on the brains front of things. And so then the question is, who can make really high quality hardware at really low cost?
Yeah.
And that's where I know that, a lot of people are going to make bots. I don't see anyone making a better bot for less money in higher volume than Tesla's going to do it. And I think that they're going to be able to keep pace at the very least, if not lead other players in the brains side of things. And so, yeah, it really just puts them ahead of everybody. And when we look at the Figure AI bot, for example, very impressive what they're doing. They have made a lot of progress, and I see a bright future for that company. I think that they can basically call their own destiny at this point. Even so, they're significantly behind. And I think a lot of the development of their technology has come from watching Tesla AI days, watching them develop the bot, seeing the decisions that they're making, and then being a fast follower. And the same thing for a number of companies in China as well.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that did pop out from the call was the machine that makes the machine that makes the machine. Even if the competition had the blueprint of what to do, they don't have the machine because
Yep.
Tesla had to build a machine. Like they had to build the actuators within the robot, which means they have an insurmountable lead, in my opinion. Agree with that? Yes or no?
100%. I've made the
Great.
exact same case with regards to the way that they're doing casting. I mean, other people are adopting casting now, but for Tesla to be casting the front giga castings of the Cybertruck with the same machine that they cast the Model Y castings means that they are so incredibly far ahead in their ability to optimize and perfect the casting process, which is a whole symphony of engineering unto itself. And I'm not even going to get into that whole thing right now.
And
But
they
that is
have,
an
yeah.
incredible thing. And it stems from exactly what you're talking about. It's because they have the control of the machine that makes the machine that makes the machine.
Exactly.
And all of that is vertically integrated. And the same way that it works there for the cars, it also is going to be a huge factor in bots.
And the magic sauce is they have SpaceX. So they have the alloy technologists as well. And that's a
Mhm.
huge
Yep.
part that other car companies haven't even begun to think about. Final question. Let me see. I had it in my head. What is the one good question that I haven't asked you today? Or what question do you have for me? Have we covered all
Oh
bases?
man, so I actually do have questions for you
Go.
on, like, I've been watching Solana. So I do have holdings in Solana. I've had them for
Good.
quite some time.
Flipping to
And
crypto. Oh my God.
yep, I I've just been watching the beta of Solana relative to Bitcoin, and it seems like it's essentially holding strong here. But there was a significant portion of time where they were completely decoupled, that Solana was moving 100% independently of Bitcoin. And it seems like maybe we have come back to a time where their movements are coupled, and there's a multiplier between the two. What caused the decoupling, and how, like, is there a chance for that to come back? And if so, what direction would that be? Like, how do you think about that coupling and uncoupling between Solana and Bitcoin over the past year?
Well, that's a super interesting question. I'll answer the first part first. Is it's kind of like Tesla. It's not correlated to anything. It does its own thing, and nobody understands it. When you come to crypto, you've got the CMC, which is the total crypto market cap. the mothership is Bitcoin. As that goes up, that'll bring the total CMC up, which will float all boats, even crap coins. But what's happening right now with Solana is you've got this huge ecosystem growing really fast. It's taking all the business away from Ethereum and all their projects and layer twos and dApps. And the adoption across these, what I call soul alts, is out of control. It's unbelievable. So what you're seeing now is liquidity being pulled from Solana because people that own Solana, they're YOLOing into these sol alts. So, and then they make money on a sol alt and then they put it into a meme coin on Solana. So it's like, so you got this interesting kind of pyramid drainage into the lower level projects, which can be very lucrative. I've never been a degenerate kind of traditional focused conservative disruption investor. And in 2017, I started with Bitcoin. I think I bought all my Ethereum in one day in March 2020. It was a C19 dip. Just boom, one fell swoop, big buy, done. And then got rid of most of that. And ever since I was looking for that Ethereum killer, spent months researching, found it, and then just went into that. But it went through a very rough patch as well with FTX and stuff. But in terms of decoupling, Solana will far outperform Ethereum, which will outperform maybe Bitcoin. But Bitcoin has the supply crunch angle, which is very special. So I hedge my bets. I have Bitcoin, Bitcoin proxies like miners and MicroStrategy, which have had a bad 2024 as well, just like Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. Sometimes the assets that I'm in, they are extremely volatile, and you can have great times and bad times. We're going through a bad January, but things will come back. Everything, cream floats to the top, as you say. Voting machine, weighing machine, cream floats to the top. So you just need to give it time. So I think once the grayscale gets rid of all the stuff that should be arbed out and sold off, the Bitcoin will start rising and all the alts will rise too. So no doubt in my mind. And what's going to happen too as well, you look at the early adopters of crypto, they go into the riskier stuff after they're done with the old stuff. So, 2017 you buy Bitcoin, then you buy Ethereum 2020. 2023 you buy Solana. And then 2024 you're buying Solana alts. But then the old money, all the boomers, etc., they start buying Bitcoin. Then they're done with that, they'll buy Ethereum. And then we're done with that, they'll buy Solana. So it's just a huge trickle down. So that's the way I kind of look. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it
It does.
does.
So that's great. And any other questions we missed today for the audience regarding AI, inference, bots? In summary, I got two or three big things from you. One was the confluence between the bots and Model 2. I didn't pick up on that. And then everything else, I think we're in violent agreement. But if you were Elon Musk and they have 30 billion in cash now, which is a substantial amount of money. They have some tailwinds going into Q1, like Cybertruck is ramping. They got the ship of Australian cars that's going to sell in January. What would you do different at all? Or would you double down on bots hard? Because I know they're running 3 shifts already, so they're already
Mhm.
doing that, you could argue. Would you do anything different if you were driving the ship?
Man, I think that Elon is a much better executor and decision maker. I ran a business for a while and I know my limitations in that area and they are much below anything that Elon would do. So I would say even with all of that, I would say that I think maybe he has a little bit too much PTSD from production hell of Model 3. And so I would encourage him to push a little bit more aggressively on the ramp up of the next generation vehicle. And I think that it's likely that that is what is happening internally. One of the things that we saw them do incredibly well with was the launch of the Model Y, that they kind of over, under promised and over delivered on that. And I think that hopefully that is what they're trying to set up to do with the next generation vehicle. But being that it is a new thing, just like Cybertruck was a new thing, that may not be something that's possible. The Model Y was just replicating what they had already done with the Model 3 based on their learnings. And so there is a lot that is new for the next generation vehicle platform, and the unboxed manufacturing process. There's going to be a lot of hiccups getting it working to begin with. And I don't know how they make it through all of that without somewhat Osborning, some existing products. And I just want to see that sooner rather than later, because the sooner we get to those lower priced EVs, the faster that we get to a sustainable energy future.
Oh, quick shout out to the Australians in the audience. Happy Australia Day. I didn't even realize. And the one thing is, like, I don't know how Tesla created the best selling car in the world that works in every country, every culture, every nation without any sales or advertising and marketing. I don't know. And I know the Model 2 is going to completely smoke the Model Y. And the Model 3 is going to destroy Toyota in North America, at least, as far as I'm concerned. And then I just hope they can ramp the Cybertruck as quick as possible, because 2.3 million pre-orders, 7-year waiting list. It's going to be crazy. Do you even think they'll still be making the Cybertruck in 2030? I guess the Model X has had a long run.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, I think they're going to be making quite a few of them. I think that that is going to sell between, and they could end up making some variations on that platform. But I would say that the Cybertruck family of trucks will sell between 500,000 and 1 million units in the back half of this decade. And definitely by 2030, we'll see just incredible numbers of deliveries on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hans. Everybody will follow you, subscribe to your channel, follow you on Twitter, and let's do this again. Maybe do it on your channel. That's a great way to boost your channel. We could do some live modeling. And speaking of live modeling, in after hours, Tesla's gone up over $1. So 180 may have been the bottom. Now it's at 183.6. That's good news. But this thing can move
You're,
fast, just like crypto. So we'll see.
yep.
What what's your
And
take?
you're much better at timing those tops and bottoms than I would be. So I'll take your word for it.
Well, it's in full disclosure, I didn't expect, like, with all of the tailwinds and, right, listening to Gary Black probably a little bit too much, but like Cybertruck and the Halo event, and I knew they'd beat 1.8 million vehicles. I was expecting an earnings surprise, like from FSD uptick or more from energy storage, which we didn't get. So that's probably going to roll into 2024. I was surprised actually on the earnings call that he sounded very negative on growth. And that's why I think he's got something up his sleeve. Because in the last or prior to last earnings call, he said 2024 is going to be off the hook when it comes to earnings. Like literally blow things out. So what's your take on that? 2024 surprise?
Yeah, I definitely think there's lots of room for surprise on the upside. And this was one of the topics that we discussed on the earnings call yesterday in the mega stream. And I liked what Matt and Yashu and Nick had to say, that they're, you know, going back to the graph that you showed earlier of the S curve of adoption, that the demand for higher levels of adoption of EVs in the United States next year really should be growing. And we've heard pretty much all the OEMs saying they're cutting back on their plans. And it's because their prices are too high. They can't really fulfill the demand at the prices that the demand is located at. And so, that seems, in my mind, to indicate that we're heading into a market that is once again supply constrained rather than
Yep.
production, or rather than demand constrained, which means that we could see prices on Tesla actually increase over the coming year instead of decreasing. And I know a lot of other analysts are predicting that we're going to have actual continued price cuts and that Tesla is just going to take this price war to the next level. But I think there's a very real possibility that actually we see the exact opposite of that. And in the scenario where we do see increasing prices at the same time that we see decreasing costs and relatively flat overall production, that could have a very positive impact to earnings. And I would expect that to have a large impact on the movement of the stock.
Yeah, it was stunning to me how General Motors and Ford are just running off with their tail between their legs, abandoning all plans, killing all investments. Like they're leaving it to the Koreans now. It would just be Kia and Hyundai. I don't see anybody
Mm-hmm.
else out there. And the other luxury EV makers, they're not going to make it. You know, the Lucids and the, what are the other ones? I can't even remember.
Rivian, and yeah, I'll be
Rivian
interested
will
to
make it,
see.
yeah. Rivian will make it on the back of just Amazon and Amazon delivery trucks. I'm seeing
Mhm.
them everywhere now. So
Yeah,
they'll be fine there. But anyway,
I think BMW is interesting. They seem to be really growing their EV business and doing much better than any of the other German companies on that front, I might add. So I think that's another one to watch and see how they do as well.
yeah, BMW are the first to unthink the whole process. They didn't take an ICE car and put a battery in it. They started from scratch, which is the right thing to do. The problem BMW have is the overhead. Other than Spartanburg in the US, the German overhead is far too high to be able to even
Hmm.
think about competing with Tesla. And remember, they're 5 to 7 years behind. They're coming out with new stuff and they'll sell some cars, but never at profit. Unless, of course, Tesla runs out of cars to sell and people are forced to buy the second best. That's kind
Hmm.
of my take. I could be off, but, and I was BMW driver for 25 years exclusively. I love the cars until Tesla. The rest
Yep.
is history. Well, that's nearly a 2 hour marathon. Thank you so much, buddy. It was fantastic. So we'll be in touch, texting back and forth, and we'll decide on
I
the
had a
next
blast. Yeah, it was a lot of
event.
fun.
So, and we learned a lot, and I hope the audience learned a lot. The timing couldn't have been more perfect with the stock down. And what I've seen as well is the 10 days after the earnings, the market digests everything that's said. And then they start putting two and two together saying, what is this? Optimus delivering next year? Model 2 delivering next year? Head and Shoulders process, step change, all that stuff.
Yep.
FSD, watching video. I mean, it's all going to come to a head. And when that does happen, things tend to go vertical. Like I remember, it was a 2020 post C19 dip, 800% in 20 weeks. It just,
Yeah, it was
that's,
ridiculous.
that's what can happen. And as you know, as you rightly said, it happens every 4 years. The pattern is there. We'll see if 2024 is the year. If not, 2025 certainly will be. And retail
Yep.
investors will keep on doing their thing, getting in early, getting in hard. Thank you so much, Hans. Have a good night, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe to Hans below, Hans C. Nelson. You'll see all his info right down below. And thanks again for coming, sir. And thank you for all your time. Have a great evening. Be in touch soon. Thanks, everybody.